teaching your dog to file their own nails is a fun trick, and it also happens to help you avoid the stresses of nail clipping, which is a nice added bonus. There are many ways you can teach a dog to do this. This video will show you a few different approaches. For approach number 1, we of course need our file board. And also a tea towel or some sort of fabric to cover the board initially, that you don't mind potentially getting ruined, because we're going to pop food underneath it, and encourage your dog to scratch to uncover the food.
Get it. Yes! Good girl.
The aim here is for your dog to sniff and try and problem solve how they're going to get the food out. There, Bella does one little scratch, and immediately after that I say yes, and then pull the tea towel down to help her uncover the treats. And I'll keep repeating this as long as she keeps doing it.
Nice!
Over time, with a bit of practice at that initial stage, what we can do is start to move the tea towel further down from the top of the board, so that when the dog makes contact with it, they'll start to also make contact with the grittiness of the sandpaper as well. At this point, I'm just using a lot of verbal encouragement and telling her to get it, so that she problem solves her way to the treat. However, once she starts to reliably scratch every time I'm popping the treat under the tea towel, I'll start to use a specific word cue for it, such as scratch it, which she'll then start to associate with that scratching action. Some dogs might be quite intent on chewing through the fabric to access the treats rather than scratching at it. This is normal, and I wouldn't tell them off for it. They are just trying to problem solve, which is what we're asking of them. To troubleshoot this, what I ended up doing was just making the tea towel a little bit thicker up the top and placing the treats higher up between my hands. She still tries the biting a little bit. I do my best to interrupt her, and she ends up attempting to scratch to get the treat, which I'm very happy about and end up rewarding her quite generously for.
Yeah!
On this occasion, I'm not actually putting a treat under the tea towel, I just pretend to.
Yes!
And the moment she scratches it, I say yes and make a big deal of it and hand over some treats from my pouch. Following this fake treat under the tea towel, I'll always put a real one just to keep confidence high.
Thank you.
And over time, I'll gradually add in more and more pretend treats under the tea towel until we don't need them there anymore, and she just hears the scratching cue and does the scratching behavior without the treat. Here, I didn't even get the chance to even pretend to put a treat under the tea towel. Bella just decided to start scratching, which is really good, so I take it, I say yes, and then I hand over some treats. At this point, Bella's a bit fixated on the concept of scratching the tea towel rather than making contact with the board, which is fine, that's what she's got from this process. But over time, I'm going to start to be a bit more specific that her nails actually need to touch the sandpaper for her to get the treat, not just the tea towel. For the second technique, once again, we rely on a bit of problem-solving skills from the dog. We're placing treats underneath the board, and once the dog sort of starts scratching and trying to get at those treats, we're going to say yes, lift up the board, and allow them to access the treats underneath. Here she tries to offer me a down position, hoping that will be enough for me to release the treats, but I just re-encourage her to engage in the board, reveal the treats very briefly to keep her interest, and then we get the scratching again. It's important to use a lot of verbal encouragement to keep the dog interested in the treat and to give them lots of verbal praise, especially when they give it a good attempt to try and get at it.
Good girl. Yes! Nice! Good job!
Once your dog is reliably scratching at the board each time you put food under, it's time to introduce a fake lure. That is when I pretend to pop a treat underneath when really I don't have anything in my hand. And then I carry on as per normal, encouraging her to scratch. The moment she does that, I say yes, put my hand in the pouch and feed her from my hand. I'm very lucky here in that the dog keeps offering the scratch despite me not pretending to put the treat under the board. But because she's offering that, I will keep marking and rewarding it. Afterwards though, it's important I go back to placing a treat under the board to keep her confidence nice and high. I'll do that a couple of times and then I might go back to doing a fake lure again. But following that, I'll always go back to using a treat just for a little bit and gradually add more and more fake lures into our training sessions. Now I noted that all of Bella's scratches so far have been on the edge of the board where it's not gritty, it's on the tape. So I'm making a point now of getting her used to the sensation of that gritty texture underfoot so that she can hopefully feel comfortable scratching along it. To do this, I'm popping a treat in front of her nose and moving it over the board so that she walks on top of it, and then the moment 1 or 2 feet make contact with the board, I'm saying yes and releasing the treat, and then repeating the process a few times. Immediately following this, she does this nice long scratch along the sandpaper, which is fabulous. For some dogs, it also seems to work better placing the treat underneath the board on the opposite side to where they're standing, because then in order to scratch near it, they have to reach across the board and contact the sandpaper as their paw moves back towards them. At this stage, I'm starting to get more specific on what it is that the dog needs to do to get the treat. Here, she's offering scratches, but just on the tape, not on the board. The moment she contacts the board with her nails, you can hear the difference, and I absolutely mark and reward her for those attempts. To increase the efficiency of this process, we want to have the board angled because that is much more effective at filing nails. So to do this, I have the board angled upwards and wedged between my knees. I then take a treat and present it to the dog underneath the hole in the board at the top, and then just as we've practiced before, in order for the treat to be released, she needs to scratch along the board, which she does beautifully here. And after a few scratches, I mark and reward. If your dog has ever been taught to shake hands in the past, you may wish to use this trick to your advantage and apply it to the scratch board. So basically, I just start asking the dog to shake hands and gradually over time start to almost dodge their paw so I'm not receiving the shake, and inadvertently their paw may contact the scratch board if it's placed at the right angle as they go to place it back on the floor.